Wolf Pack, a pack of wolves, aka Muscle and Feels podcast, episode 1. We would have liked to call this the Wolfpack podcast, but a certain bag brand has taken and copyrighted the name, the infamous Stolen Valor bag, because I always thought that people who wear it were active military personnel because of the little flag patch that it has on the back. Turns out they're just fitness enthusiasts who could also be military personnel. Anyways, Muscle and Feels podcast, episode 1, the intro episode, the beginning of the new era in podcast and fitness. Terms and conditions apply. Beginning of new era may mean a new podcast with me and myself and Milo.
I'm being threatened.
There we go. The mascot of the podcast has already joined us.
He will only be appearing in the first episode, so not much of a mascot, but he is here.
Indeed. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Patroklos Pack Androulakis Korakakis, a.k.a. Pack. And on my left, I have the one, the only, Mr. Milo Wolf. And you can already see how appropriate of a name Wolfpack would have been because of our names. But hey-ho, turns out that's not possible. That said, let's briefly talk about how the name Muscle and Feels came to life and what this podcast will be about. So, Milo, I've, monopolized, if that's a word, the podcast thus far. So I'll pass it over to you. Thank our sponsors as well, Monster and Highland Spring, for sponsoring this side of the episode. And yeah, over to you.
And Sure. Shout out to Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So we were going to name it the Wolfpack Podcast, thinking we were very clever, but it turns out another company had beaten us to the punch and named their backpack the Wolfpack with a K, just like my good friend Pack's name, unfortunately, which you might not know is also what's it called? An anagram?
It's an anagram for the full name, Patroklos Androulakis Korakakis.
It works out very well. Anyways, so we were thinking about another name, and we decided, hey, you're part of that fringe group called Roids and Feels, aren't you?
Shout out Roids and Feels. Those who know.
Exactly.
And as an homage to the infamous group that got me into lifting, shitposting, and so on and so forth.
And to Muscle and Fitness, the best fitness magazine out there.
The #1 magazine that we will use as our main source of information for most of the claims that we make here.
Indeed.
Shout out Jim Stopani.
We just had to pay homage to the great magazine that it is. And so, Muscle and Feels, here we are. And also because ultimately, along our journey, don't we all have some feels? Don't we all?
For sure. I think it's more about, after a certain point, it starts with the feels. Somewhere in the middle, you lose your path and you start, focusing too much on either PRs, numbers, or physique changes. And then at some point, you snap back into reality and it's just back.
Whoa, there goes gravity.
Back to those feels. Mom spaghetti. 4 secrets to bigger arms is today's episode. But yeah, the feels are the main reason why we started lifting and why we're still lifting, in our humble opinion. That said,
Who are we?
That's true. Pack Milo Wolf, much better than the fake natty Milo of Croton. As a Greek man, I can say it. Milo of Croton. 1, fake natty. 2, big cap. The guy did not carry anything. Carried a calf one day. The Greeks went ahead and then made it into a whole legend. And
Did you know he also ate 10 kilograms of bread, 10 kilograms of meat, and 10 liters of wine a day? That's what he did for his diet.
My breakfast.
Indeed.
Is that something they mentioned as well?
Yeah, on Wikipedia page at least, it says that was his diet. And then he died, did you know? He was trying to rip apart a tree stump, but got stuck, and then a pack of wolves came and ate him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I know.
Wow.
It works out perfectly.
The Matrix, Milo Wolf.
Whoa.
Really? He got eaten by a pack of wolves?
Yeah. Well,
and your name is Milo Wolf. I didn't know that.
Anyways, who are you?
My name is Pack, a.k.a. Dr. Pack on Instagram.
2 underscores.
I did my PhD in sports science at the University of Solent here in Southampton, United Kingdom. Shout out the whole of United Kingdom. And I am a lifter, resistance training enthusiast is what I want to
Strength
call it.
trainee.
Strength trainee, guy who loves lifting weights. I have a research and academic background in sports science, and more specifically research in hypertrophy, strength training, strength sports like powerlifting, strongman, etc. I coach for strongerbyscience.com. Disclaimer, Milo does as well. We'll speak about that in a second. We are just coaches for SBS. We are not owners, employees, and views are our own, just to throw that out there. And I have been lifting for about 12 years now, entering the 13th year, teaching, researching, coaching, and just enjoying everything that has to do with getting bigger, stronger, bolder, and, as you can tell, fatter. Over to you. Who are you, kind sir?
My name is Milo. I am the one whose office is being used for this podcast, and it's
Vandalized office, but
Indeed.
gotta rate the setup.
hey, you got to do it. I am a PhD student in sports science at Solent, which is where Pat got his PhD. He forgot to mention that he has a PhD, I think.
I don't know. It was the first thing I mentioned.
Wow, I wasn't even listening.
Wow, the zone out was real there.
Indeed. So I'm doing my PhD at Solent University on the topic of range of motion and strength and hypertrophy. So essentially, does a partial range of motion lead to more or less strength and hypertrophy gains than a full range of motion, and all that good stuff. Before that, I did an undergrad in sports science, as did Pac. We both skipped our masters because we're too cool for masters.
We don't like no masters.
Exactly. Besides academia, I'm also a coach. I've been coaching people for around 4 or 5 years now almost. Coached bodybuilders, coached some powerlifters, mostly gen pop though, people trying to gain muscle, lose fat, and so forth. What else? I've competed in powerlifting and bodybuilding once.
That's true.
Not very well in either, but hey, I went and did it.
You did really well in bodybuilding, because I mean, I was gonna say, yeah, let's show some pictures now on the screen, but nobody's gonna sit and do that.
The budget for the podcast is quite high actually, but our time investment is quite low.
Yeah, you can see Milo's pictures on his profile, but you competed once, and you, instead of competing at the novice, first timers, junior category, you competed in the open, showed up, did really well. You managed to get glute striations to a certain extent.
Yeah. Which for a first timer is decent.
Is decent, yeah.
Yeah.
Powerlifting
20 years
you did
ago,
once.
I would have been the most conditioned man on earth.
That's true.
You know,
The word conditioning is triggering.
it is.
But I've competed in powerlifting, I think, 3 or 4 times back in the day, back in 2017. But you may compete in bodybuilding at some point in the future, right?
That is correct. Maybe in 2025 or so.
I'm not planning on competing, but we are both still chasing PRs. And what are some of your best gym and or competition lifts?
Wow.
Just to set the credibility, because there is a crowd that heard the words, the letters
this convince
PhD.
you?
Your citation is right there.
Indeed.
Reviewer 3. So there's a crowd that heard the 3 letters PhD, and they're like, oh wow, science.
And there's another crowd
Evidence.
who heard us talk about muscle and fitness, and they're also on board. So we got everyone now.
Yeah, but
You have to watch this podcast to the end.
we have to throw some numbers in the mix as well.
Sure.
To let them know.
My bench is kind of trash, so I won't talk about that. I've deadlifted 500 for 10 or so, and my best squat is probably around, I don't know, 200 for 8 high bar, something like that.
It's important to know that high bar, by most people's standards,
It's like controlled eccentric,
controlled
ass to grass,
eccentric, ass to grass, etc.
the whole schmick.
The whole schmick. And yeah, just to note it, I've squatted 600, near 600, in comp, but I was much heavier, but at least younger.
Bodyweight squat. Congrats,
Bodyweight
pal.
squat. That's true.
For reference, I'm saying this because he was around 300 pounds or 135 kilograms heavy at the time.
I weighed in at 130 on comp day, but 21 years old.
Thick as a Snicker.
But back then, 2017, that squat in all drug tested, listen to the cope. We checked it with Nick the other day. In all drug tested juniors in the world in 2017 only, not taking in any other years, it was like top 50. just breaking top 50 in the world. So top 50
That
lifter
one
right
time.
there. Also 500 kilo
For
deadlift
people
for
who had a
10.
ginger beard and who were bald and look kind of homeless,
Yeah.
you're top one in my heart.
For Greeks with 2 surnames from Athens, from the neighborhood of Halandri, from the
Indeed.
street that has a pedestrian road.
You're going to get DDoS.
Number 3. So, 270 squat back then, much heavier. It was okay, like a legit squat, but nothing too crazy. 180 front squat in the gym. 315 or 140. I'm not sure why we're doing pounds and kilos simultaneously.
We have an international audience, trust me.
Bench 3 plates, 4 reps, like 5 reps on bench. My bench is not my best lift. Deadlifted 282.5 kg at 105-ish. A few days ago, actually. Overhead pressed, because that's what I like to do. I don't like to bench. 2 plates for 2 reps, strict-ish. Also, relatively recently. And I think that's about that. I've repped 550, 250.
Let's get the Stronger by Science disclaimer out the way.
We got it already.
No, did we?
I mentioned it.
Wow, I've been completely ignoring you.
Yeah, I
You
said.
can just say anything now and I'll be like, oh, really? I didn't hear it.
Yeah, so even though we coach for Stronger by Science, strongerbyscience.com, views are our own. This is not like a Stronger by Science, I don't know, spin-off podcast or related in any sort of way with the services that we offer through them, and it has nothing to do with
RP either, by the way. I know I'm wearing an RP tank top.
I'm wearing
no
an
affiliation.
M. Huncho t-shirt.
M. Huncho actually sponsored the podcast.
Actually, sponsored,
Shout out M.
responsible.
Huncho.
Yeah, responsible for what we say, hold him liable. But yeah, SBS, nothing to do with the podcast, nothing to do with our views. But shout out to SBS, huge, a resource that I used to recommend to all the students at the university when I was teaching at university, and a resource that both of us as lifters really, really
Value.
Yeah, I don't know why I had the word value was not heavy enough. So okay, I'm going to take my tongue out of SBS's ass and return to this intro episode. So the point of this podcast is not just for us to ignore each other, aka Milo to ignore me.
I have ADHD.
Well on
crippling
camera. I have ADHD, so he can say it before you say anything.
Yes.
And the point of this podcast is for us to, one, be scientific enough and go over stuff that we like around lifting, hypertrophy, strength, and discuss nuances, discuss details, geek out over strength, hypertrophy, new studies, etc. At the same time, have a bit of fun, speak the way we speak when we are just hanging out, because a lot of our chats are about the community, new research, how to optimize training, and have guests from all over the globe. I'm not sure why I looked at your camera. Coaches, researchers, people that we have access to discuss topics, bring them on, get them to be a bit danker than they usually are, and just give people the chance to learn, but also have a bit of fun.
Indeed. That is the aim of the podcast. And to be honest, I think that wraps up a pretty lengthy introduction to the podcast. What do you think?
Yes, for sure. I don't think there's anything else to mention besides, we could plug the coaching in.
Yeah, we could. So, as we said, we're both SBS coaches. So if you want any coaching, you can refer to SBS, or you can reach out to us individually. At least for me, I'm not sure how packed those things nowadays. At Wolf Coach on Instagram for coaching needs. And
for everything else, strongerbyscience.com/coaching. Plenty of good coaches, including ourselves, to work with.
He knows the URL by heart. He knows the URL by heart.
Yes.
What a man.
It's quite a difficult URL.
Indeed.
And for the first sort of intro topic, since it's timely, is it timely?
Yeah, timely. It's in vogue right now.
Wow. Okay. The native English speaker
Indeed.
is here. Let's talk a bit about the new IPF bench rule. So I'll let you take it away. You are the ROM guy. I am the minimum dose gimmick guy. You can do a bit less and make some gains for some time.
And as an aside, full podcast episodes on our respective PhD researchers coming soon. So
indeed,
keep an eye out. Yeah, so recently there's been an announcement, and I think this has been discussed for quite a while now, about a change to bench press rules for the IPF specifically. So IPF, one of the bigger powerlifting federations at the moment, at least drug-tested ones. And after a lot of talk, I think, around bench pressing and how, especially with the broader appeal, were you falling asleep?
Yes, IPF bench rule gets me instant.
The melatonin, the new melatonin.
Just kidding. Yes, continue, please.
So there was a lot of talk around bench press technique, kind of in the broader fitness and general population as well. People have always made jokes or ridiculed people with a big arch on benches with not much range of motion. And so I think, the IPF caught wind of that, and maybe in combination with complaints from certain lifters, what have you, they decided to make a change to the rules about range of motion. Specifically, now, from my understanding of things, you have to have your elbow joint be equal to or lower than your shoulder joint at the bottom of the bench during your pause. So if, for example, your elbow doesn't get as low as your shoulder viewed from the back, right? Let's say you're benching, someone from the back is watching. If your elbow joint doesn't get lower than your shoulder joint, then that lift is not legal and it doesn't pass with 3 white lights or what have you, which previously wasn't the rule, and which means that a lot of lifters with pretty big arches and or pretty wide grips and or short arms, I guess, usually, would have to change their technique to pass their benches in competition. And to be clear, this rule I think is applicable from 2023 onwards, so anyone competing this year doesn't have to worry about it. But yeah, that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, for sure. And when is the rule coming into full effect?
I think that's 1st of January 2023. Well,
with the setup now, it's impossible to get the door. Is it a delivery?
I think it's a delivery, yeah. Let me go grab it. I think we're nearing 30 minutes.
We are in 30 minutes. I'm going to keep rolling here and just say my piece. Milo's crawling under the desk and under the light sources that we've set up. The sound is pretty good here, so you probably cannot hear him. I am going to solo hijack this podcast and act as elevator music until he interrupted by the bell, but we're back. We thought we're actually waiting for a Wolfpack bag. That's no joke. And we thought we were interrupted by the delivery guy bringing that, aka Wolfpack, trying to sabotage us. They're lucky they copyrighted the name, because a lawsuit would be coming their way quite soon if they hadn't. Why would they get a lawsuit if they haven't copyrighted the name? Why not? Because we can. You're going to get sued. I've been watching a lot of Better Call Saul lately, so I'm all lawyer talk these days. Objection.
All about the law.
Objection, hearsay. That said, so IPF bench rule, snooze fest, and you left it at it's going to affect a lot of lifters that have short arms and have been benching that way. Was that the last comment?
Short arms, wider grips usually, and bigger arches.
Yeah, and we said it's coming in effect in 2023.
Yeah, I think beginning of the year.
And what happens to the I think these are things that still need answering. The records that are currently in place, will there just be, a hypothetical asterisk next to them for those that know that, oh yeah, this was done before 2022?
I kind of think, so there's what I think should be done, and there's what I think will be done. I think what I think will be done is...
So the truth and then BS.
Exactly.
There we go.
So I think what will be done is actually what should also be done in this case, which is nice. So I think what the IPF is going to do, and I'm not sure about this, is they're going to essentially count the old records the same way they would count new lifts. So there's no differentiation. For people in the know within the powerlifting community, they'll be like, oh yeah, that was with different standards and so forth.
Cope.
But I kind of prefer that approach because nowadays, with how many federations there already are for powerlifting, tested versus untested, raw versus equipped versus different styles of equipped, for example, different exact rules, different standards for judging, it's not a level playing field to begin with. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that generating a new class of bench press records is going to make the sport better as a whole. I don't think it matters that much. So I'm happy with them comparing bench pressing under the old rules to bench pressing under the new rules, and that's fine, I think, because ultimately you have to consider that with any discussion, and it's not just about the rules or the rules of the sport itself. It can also be about the training methods they had available at the time. It can be about the nutrition they had available at the time, the science, and so forth. Like, the playing field is never perfectly level.
The science.
Indeed. It's all made up. Barbalo et al. 2020 or something.
The science. Like we don't know.
Indeed.
Drug tested. No, I'm just joking.
One question I'm interested in is, do you think it's a good change on the whole?
I am not entirely sure. I think yes, to a point. So if me personally, I didn't mind the previous rule, but I don't mind the change as well, if that makes sense. So with the previous rule, I thought, for the few freaks that were able to have insane arches, I found, of course, this is what you get. Absolutely lovely cat. Shout out to Raz, of course. Why not sit there? I thought that you had the few freaks that had the insane arch that could get away with, a huge bench, even though it wasn't a full ROM bench or whatever. But at the same time, I didn't think it was the norm, so I didn't necessarily mind. From making the sport and the bench more legit point of view, and obviously keep in mind, as a non-powerlifter, my opinion is somewhat affected by, is not affected by my emotion or how it will affect my competition. Plus, most of my competitive powerlifters, if not all, don't have that insane arch that would allow them to do that. Anyways, I think from making the sport a bit more attractive to some people, making the IPF actually. So let's not equate the sport with the IPF necessarily.
Indeed.
And that's, I think, another discussion, because it's funny because I'm trying to ignore him, but he's like, okay, I'm going to intensify now this and stand on my 2 feet. Could you get down? Thank you.
He's a closet cat. What can you do?
Yep. So, yeah, let's not equate the sport with the IPF. I think it will make competing... Fourth take. So let's not equate the IPF with powerlifting. At the same time, especially with the whole bam that's been happening in the US,
the schmick,
the shtick, the whole situation in the US with the IPF and USAPL separating. The IPF, I think, is trying to might be trying to make things more attractive for people to compete there. I think it does help a bit with the credibility of the sport and the IPF for some people that will see the world records, or at least won't see, actually, because there's still plenty of world records to see in non-IPF competitions. So the fact that you're going to stop seeing those YOLO super small ROM benches, that may help a bit. But in reality, do you really think that that this has really pushed people away, given the fact that I'm going to sound old, we live in the age of social media where you see so many lifts, insane feats of strength every day, multiple competitors. A lot of the non-tested federations get a lot of publicity as well. You've got celebrities like Russell Orhe and so on and so forth that are YouTubers as well, that get a lot of, that are pushing the sport out there. Do you think anybody has said, yeah, I don't want to compete in powerlifting because that one guy in that one weight class had a huge arch and this is not cool?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to agree with you, but also disagree with you. I'm going to agree in that I don't think this small tweak is going to help differentiate the IPF from other federations, for example. Like, no one's going to go, oh, the IPF is where those legit benches happen. That's where I'm going to go compete. But at the same time, yes, social media has helped normalize, arching a lot on bench or minimizing range of motion and making that a bit more widely accepted. But at the same time, social media is also where a lot of people comment on, arching being too extreme, the range of motion being so small that it's a joke and it's not even legit anymore. People don't recognize it as much. So I'd say social media is both helping normalize it, but it's also a place where you can see how absurd it is perceived by some people. Like, some people do view it as quite absurd how limited range of motion can get on bench pressing and powerlifting.
For sure. But the way I meant it before is, what do you think those? I mean, obviously, cool. There's going to be it's the internet. People are going to chat shit regardless. So like even under Julius's bench when he missed 800 pounds, or like you're unhealthy, this that. Like, people will hate, but I'm saying, are those people really people that are being put off the sport, or is it affecting the sport or the IPF? Because if they want to compete and they don't necessarily want to be in a federation where people bench with that arch, they can just go to another federation and they can still be part of the sport. Because I think a lot of people have made that point. It's better for the sport as a whole. Where I think, yeah, maybe by a bit. At the same time, let's not take the comment section as a true reflection of what people think about powerlifting.
100%. And I kind of want to segue off of that into a lot of people are making a big deal out of this change, us included, because, you know, we have to make a living. But I don't think it makes that much of a difference. So for context, I've seen quite a few lifters who I deem to have pretty big arches, like just off looking at them, which is how most people look at arches anyways. They don't look at biomechanical analyses of joint kinetics, you know. And with those people, and they went ahead and recorded some sets with their bench from the appropriate angle. And for a lot of them, even those with pretty big arches, they still passed the lift by those rules. Those new rules with the elbow joint being lower than the shoulder joint. So I don't think it'll actually practically make that big of a difference for almost everyone. I think for some people, like especially for, I don't know, Julius Maddox, do you really think he has to worry about that rule? Because he's benching with close grip, not arching much. He's definitely getting his...
And he's not in the IPF.
Indeed. Good point as well. But I think for most...
Yeah, most people, it will affect the few world record holding, freaks that were able to have an insane arch, and it may allow for some placings, at least in the world setting, so, and in the bench press specifically, maybe total as well, to be somewhat affected. But we shall see how much people's strength is going. I mean, it will be a significant reduction in some people's benches, but it remains to be seen whether it's going to completely change the way competitions are going.
I think on the whole, where it'll have the most impact is obviously in bench-only competitions, and then in general, probably more so for obviously people with bigger archers currently. Lighter lifters usually have bigger archers, I think. You know, as you get heavier, you usually see smaller archers.
Wow.
And I think generally, and again, no citation here, so take it as you will, but I think generally women have bigger archers as well. So I think those are probably the people who have to be a bit more concerned with that rule change. And as you said, it might mean that certain records for bench and potentially for totals, although I'm a bit more skeptical of that because benching doesn't make up that much of your total anyways. It might mean that those records are a bit more unassailable now than they were previously.
Oof. The words. Me here, Greek ape, Milo, the real Greek philosopher, looking like one too. The one point that was made that I saw, I think Mike T made it on his Instagram, and a few people, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it was him, is the complexity this rule adds to judging.
Yeah, I would agree. At the same time, there's already so many nuances to judging that potentially should be done away with entirely at some point.
Wow, that is a hot take.
Indeed.
Could you expand?
I mean, ideally, and this is not something that's going to happen in the near future.
Shout out James Steele, Dr. James Steele, Associate Professor James Steele.
Why are we...
It sounds like something James would say.
Indeed.
I think,
hey, let's shout him out anyways. Shout out James Steele.
Numbers, rankings should go away altogether.
Indeed. I mean, the correlation between lean body mass and powerlifting placement is so high that we may as well just measure lean body mass and do away with the competition itself.
Indeed. And then stop measuring lean body mass and just let people choose their place.
Yeah, just look at people and say, you look pretty jacked. I think you should be first. Bodybuilding in a nutshell, by the way, which is why it's the best sport.
Better than the Olympics altogether.
Indeed. Anyways, so I kind of think there's so many nuances and subjectivity within judging already as it is that ideally, eventually it would be replaced by some sort of video analysis system that takes care of it for you. Obviously, there'll also be limitations there, but I think removing the human element as soon as possible, as soon as it's effective enough to do so, that would be good. And then we can replace the humans competing in powerlifting with machines, and we can just match up our machine against other people's machines and see whose machine is the strongest.
Essentially, esports.
Exactly. That's
Esports
exactly what we should do.
much better than powerlifting and bodybuilding
Much cooler.
together.
Much
Come
more
at
fun
me.
to watch.
And they deserve to be making more money than other athletes.
Comfortably.
But yeah, you opened Pandora's box there with the hot take, Mr. What was
Ray Kurzweil?
no in Terminator? I'm blanking out.
Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Not Arnold Schwarzenegger. The
Terminator?
the robots.
Right, you've lost it. You lost it.
I lost it. I'm trying to find it. What was it called?
I don't know. I never watched Terminator. I'm just making up words.
I haven't watched Terminator.
Hey.
Skynet. Yeah. With your hot take and the Skynet sort of vision, dream.
Dream, vision, both making it a reality ASAP.
Imagine the shit show though there. If that was considered, not even implemented, because okay, to implement this, imagine now the money, the research, the research.
I mean, it's not too no. So I'm deviating from the whole Skynet stuff because we're gonna get absurd otherwise. I was gonna get back to the Mike T comment. It's not too dissimilar to the squat depth.
Skynet.
It's not too dissimilar to the squat depth conversation. Which there's always gonna be some subjectivity. With bench, you could argue that only one of the judges, the one seeing the bench from behind, essentially, like behind the lifter's head, would have the most authority to say, oh, that was a good lift. And I can see how it increases subjectivity as a whole. But at the same time, it's kind of like a trade-off, you know? You win in credibility, in quotation marks, to the general population, maybe make the IPF more appealing to noobs who don't like people who arch a lot, because I think generally people unaccustomed to powerlifting are the ones most opposed to large arches and minimal range of motion on benching. The ones who've been powerlifting for a while, typically, they're used to it, they're pretty happy with it. So I think it might bring more people into powerlifting as a whole and into IPF specifically, but on the flip side, it introduces a bit more, bit more of a blurred line with regards to judging the bench press.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and that was the point before. I think that non-powerlifters will still have something to hate on, as they already do, and they're not going to get into powerlifting just because the one federation that in the world level there's freaks. Because you could go to divisional, even national IPF competitions, and you're not going to see, it's not everybody benching with an insane arch, at least here in the UK. That said, I really did want to talk more about Skynet and your vision, but we'll park that for the moment. I think that we can start wrapping this intro episode up, unless you have much to add.
No, not much. I'm just saying the takeover is inevitable, and brace yourselves.
It would be nice. I do think there's a lot to think about there, and given the fact that powerlifting is, for most people, if not all people, a hobby sport.
But they take it very, very seriously.
They do, but I mean, from the money side, if all of a sudden, random federation in Greece needs to buy the Milo Judge 3.5.
I'll give you a discount.
Red light. We're not even red
shit.
light. It looks shit. Disqualified. You look bald. I can say it. So yeah, short and sweet intro episodes. Our socials will be in the description on podcast platforms and on YouTube. From now onwards, the plan is to release a few episodes per month. We're testing our rhythm and our work capacity and other words, and those episodes are expected to be somewhere around the hour and a half mark.
Where can we listen to this beautiful piece of art?
This beautiful piece of art will be on Spotify, Apple Music, and maybe other podcast platforms. That's something we're still figuring out, but on the mainstream podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube, with a visual extravaganza that we've set up, and Milo flexing and ignoring me. Your citation is right there. Science
Sorry,
feels...
what was that about citations? I wasn't listening again.
Science feels men's Shout out Jason Genova for the real ones. Coming right your way. The new era of podcasting is here. Terms of conditions apply. New era of podcasting may mean a podcast with myself and Milo talking shit. And we appreciate your attention for the 3 people that reached the end. You are the real ones. Discount code for Amazon 63Z capital T B5, 50% off. And we'll see you next time. Right?
See you next time.
The IPF president is a weirdo.